All right, everybody, we are live in the Spark Community virtual gathering space. I am so excited for this conversation with Tesa Colvin. Um, oh my gosh. So before we get started, I just have to tell y'all this is really special because I get to work with Tesa on a very regular basis. And she is someone who is a really special person in my life. So for me to get to spotlight you, Tesa, usually you're the one supporting me. She's my coach in a lot of ways, more than just a book coach. I'm like, can I just call you? You're more than a coach.
Okay,
You force to be reckoned with, y'all.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
That's right. That's right. So, for those of you who don't know this amazing human being, Tesa embodies courageous leadership to me. I met her, what was it, back in November, maybe?
Yep.
November, December, and over the virtual ether of Facebook, as a mutual friend of mine was speaking really highly of her. And y'all know community is everything. And this Spark community is a virtual space for us to gather and know that we're not alone, right? And when a friend of mine said this amazing person helped her write her book, and I just had started thinking about writing a book, I was like, I need to get to know Tesa. I need to know more about this person. She started a company called Borrow My MBA. And she just wears so many hats, y'all. She's a supporter of entrepreneurs. She supports and coaches folks who are serious about taking their business, their message, their mission to a wider audience. She helps startups and entrepreneurs establish their business. So she does the business side of things. She helps entrepreneurs and social impact leaders get their message out to the world. And so I could go on and on about everything that Tesa does, but I'll just stop with a quote that she says, which is, people don't have to entrust their dreams to me. So I take it very seriously when they do. And my number one priority becomes helping them not only reach their goals, but exceed them. And the title of this conversation is, let's talk about owning our stories and why it takes courage to share your truth, to stand in your truth and to share it unapologetically. And so without further ado, welcome Tesa to the Spark virtual gathering space.
I'm so excited to be here. Like, that's the best intro. I'm like, yeah, I'm in here. Like,
Yes, you are. Yes, you
so
are.
I'm super excited to talk about this because I get this so often. People say, and this may be some watchers, I want to write a book, but I'm afraid of what people will think. Like, that encompasses so much. They're afraid to tell their story. They have survivor's remorse almost because they've survived some things, they've grown from some things. And it's like, but this person is still over there, or this person who was involved, they're going to feel a certain way. And it's like, we have to work through that. So I'm excited to really dive into the meat of that because that is something that just holds people hostage. And I know that's a rough term, but it holds them hostage and doesn't allow them to celebrate their existence. Like, I said it, I put it out there. That's how I feel.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you take it really seriously, and this is
I do.
why I'm really excited to have you in this space, right? Because this community, for those of you who are watching live, join us, right? I see we have a viewer. Someone said, woo, woo. This is a conversation. Everything about this interview series is really to put out to the world what it looks like to have unpolished, unprepared, real-time conversations about courageous leadership. And that looks and feels differently every single day, because to lead and to be visible and to share your story it takes courage. It takes courage, right? And this topic, if you're watching replay, then just put in hashtag team replay and we'll still engage and be a part of this conversation, because this is a topic that's always going to be present. And whether you are writing your book, whether you've thought about writing a book, or whether you think someday I'll write a book before I die, imagine this conversation as like your story is your vehicle. So maybe it's your very first blog, or maybe it's your very first Facebook Live, or the first time you share some aspect of your story with people who you care about and people who share a similar path as you,
Right.
right? So I just wanted to say that out the gate, because whether, sometimes people hear the word book and they're like, whoa, that's not me. I don't want to write a book. That sounds really overwhelming,
Right.
So I just wanted to bring that in.
And I'm glad that you said that, because that's the whole thing. People think you have to write a book a certain way. I'm a rebel, y'all.
Yes, she
And
is.
um, one thing I will tell you is that your voice is your voice. It should sound the same when you speak. It should sound the same when you write, because it's you. You shouldn't have to feel like you've got to adapt and close things in and get super professional. Or if that's not how you speak, if that's not how you impart into people, then don't do that to yourself. Again, rough word, it imprisons your message, right? It imprisons your message. And so, before we get into all of that, let me say this. The first step in owning your story is to give yourself permission to tell it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to
Mm-hmm.
give yourself permission to share your wins, your losses, when you scraped your knee, when you stood up and decided that was it, right? And so it's it's very important. I know it's like, give myself permission. If I decide to write the book, then I've given myself permission. That's not true. That is so not true.
Right.
And so more often than not, I shared on my community somewhere that I spoke to a bunch of women last week, and they all had the same. It's like they had not said, hey, girl, it's okay. It's okay that you survived that. They were ready to tell the story, but they were getting blocked. They were getting stuck because the permission wasn't there. That's a
Mm.
big deal. It's
That
a
is a
big
really big
deal.
deal. It is a really, really big deal. Tell me more. You were about to finish that.
Yeah. Well, and so the whole thing is we give ourselves permission every single day. Like,
Mm.
I'm trying to eat better. And so sometimes I give myself permission to splurge, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a big deal, right? Because it's like, girl, pat yourself on the back. That's your reward. That permission to talk about what you overcame, that's a part of your celebration. That's a
Right.
part of your reaching back. And
Right.
so that permission moment, that moment where you say, you know what, it's okay for me to talk about this thing that I overcame, whatever it was, or this win that I had,
Mm.
or me getting out of my neighborhood and then going back. It's okay for me to talk about it. Why is that important? Because the next thing is owning it. Once you give yourself permission, you truly own it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before, you might dabble in it a little bit, you might share a little bit, you might cry with friends about it a little bit, or you might weave a little bit of it into your marketing or whatever. But when you give yourself permission to just full on be that boss that overcame, that learned from, that grew from, it takes your message to the next level, and you own
Yes.
it. You own it. There's a shift that happens.
That's right. That's right. And that shift is significant. So let's pause real quick and say, hey, Mama J, I'm so glad Jillian's in the house. I had to pull up my side. I have my phone here so I could actually see who's commenting. So Jillian, right on. It does take courage to show up week after week, day after day, and to claim and acknowledge that actually we owe ourselves, at the very least, we owe ourselves that permission. And as women, it's not always easy because we can put other people first. We can think about all of the other things that we could and should be doing or what have you. And so I just want to thank you for lifting that up. And whoever else is in the house, join us and let us know what questions this sparks for you or what connections come up for you. And so, Tessa, when you say, you mentioned your story and kind of like your message a lot. Let's say someone's pretty clear on the fact that they want to help people and they know that they do what they do, but they haven't thought about putting it out there in a different way or in a platform of a book or a blog or another way. So
Okay.
what would you say kind of the first thing is required for people to take that courageous step when they're thinking about actually owning their story?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so the first step is clarity. I know we hear it all the time. Don't roll your eyes. I know we hear it all the time, but if you're not clear, you're going to create chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want that. Chaos breeds writer's block because you don't know which direction to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you want to get crystal clear on who you're talking to,
Yes.
right? Who are you talking to? I'm not going to talk to you about tying your shoe the same way I would talk to a 6-year-old. At least I hope not. Right? It's different. The language is different. The level is different. The ability to infer and things like that, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get clear on who you're talking to, there's the ability to connect better. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm talking to single moms, I was a single mom for a period of time in my life. I can narrow in on some things that single moms know, like, sneaking off to the bathroom just to have a moment to yourself. That's a single mom thing. Like, I can speak to that. I
Yeah.
can speak to that, right? But I've never been a single dad. And I would have to really work at that. Not saying I couldn't do it, but just making sure that I'm clear, because that would need some work, right? That would mean speaking to teenagers. I'm a little bit removed. I'm just a couple years removed from being a teenager, right? And so I need to be able to say things like fleek and not let them, tick them off. Like, did she just say that? Like, I got to be able to relate. I got to know their language. And so
Mm-hmm.
clarity leads to those things. When you know who
Mm-hmm.
you're talking to, then you can really dig into their language and what you're talking about with them. That's important, whether you're doing a
Mm-hmm.
book, whether you're doing a blog, because you don't want to create these things just for you, right? Because that's a journal. That's a
Right.
journal.
Right. Right. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions and myths out there, right? Like there are so many shoulds in the world of blogging and book writing and publishing and stuff like that. And you can get trapped, you can get lost in that world. To be honest, like my journey, I probably came to you and I said, hey, I think I know I have a message to tell. People keep saying like I should have a book or I should have a guide that goes with the card game. There
Right.
should be some book, like something that should be more than the card game, right?
Right.
And I remember thinking like there's so much information and so many people have told me what I should do that I can't hear myself in all this noise, And so I think staying tethered, the connection that I'll make around being aligned with your core values and your why. Like, why is this your wake up in the morning? Like, I can't not do this
Right.
thing. Why is this your work? Why is this your mission? And with that clarity comes something that is beyond you. Like, then
Right.
it's clear that it's like, yep, this is the thing that needs to be out there because it's actually not about me.
And that again goes back to permission,
Mm-hmm.
because it's about unlocking your message. Um, whether we like to admit it or not, this is a hard truth. We filter more than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
We filter, we water down more than we realize, because in our minds, it's like people can't handle that. If I shared that, people can't handle that. If I said it just like that, how it came to me, people can't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that's not true. It's
Right.
not true,
Right.
because we are creative beings. You have some who are more creative than others, but we're still creative beings. And how you
Mm-hmm.
got it, that's how you need to deliver it.
That's
Um, but again, just taking into account that audience,
mm-hmm.
right? These are the things that go into that permission. I give myself permission to tell the unfiltered story. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big deal. Like, that's freeing, and that can be a little scary, because it's like, whoo, oh, that's raw. It's going to be rough or something like that. But don't, you got to think about the power that comes with that. The
Right.
power that comes with that. I mean, I've shared several parts of my story in my lifetime, and just made the decision I'm not going to filter, and it helps. It touches, it opens up the lines of communication. I'm real big on communication and conversation. Like, conversation's my favorite word. Rachel, you know that?
I know, I know. That's why we love each other so much.
That's my favorite word, because a conversation is interactive. You're not talking at, you're not preaching at, you're not teaching at. It's a dance. And I'm not a dancer, but it's a dance. So that's my version of dancing, right?
Yeah.
It's a back and forth. You got to learn the people's rhythms that you're communicating with. It's a big deal. It's a super big deal. Owning your story, though, starts with you, your permission, your decision,
Yes.
right? You gotta, you've got to own it. You've got to own it throughout, and then you've got to own it. That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother thing. Because I'm a proponent of self-publishing, but again, that's my
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
wheelhouse. But because that's another layer of owning it. I
That's
don't
right.
want to be forced to filter,
Mm.
right?
And oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Something that you have taught me is that the only filters we need are actually to filter the filters. Like
Mhm.
we need to filter our thoughts and our beliefs that lead to either like some shoulds or some deficit, or I'm going to listen to that, or they said. It's like,
Right,
no, the first filter needs to be, what is the story we're telling ourselves? Like,
right,
really, did you just actually say that yesterday when we were talking? I said the worst case scenario is da 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 da, and you're like, pause. And you said, did you just hear yourself? Right? Like
right,
the filter that we actually need is really around our own inside out. What
right.
is the story what is the story we're believing?
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good piece of it, because we have a habit of regurgitating what we believe. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the example yesterday is your filter was shifted perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you just went a couple of inches in the other direction, your believed outcome is different, right? So filtering, it's like the gift that keeps on kicking you. Like
Right. Yeah.
it doesn't go well. And so one thing that I really want to stress is that when it comes, we hear, especially in the online arena, we hear about authenticity and things like that, and being vulnerable. And we have even gotten to the point where we filter those words out. And
Mm-hmm.
we immediately, when we see that, we think marketing, we think, positioning. That's what that's about. And it's really not about connection. But when you get to the real root of terms like that and the emotion behind that, it's to share, it's about sharing your story.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And your gift is not just about sharing with you. You make people feel the story, because it's so authentic. Like you embody authenticity. It's like you don't have to say the word. The way you show up, the way you are with people allows for people to feel who you are, which is, it takes courage to actually do that type of work. It looks effortless with you, but I know that it takes work, right? To be who you are always as you are, because it's a powerful force. So tell me a time. Let's dig into your story a little bit,
Okay.
Tessa. So
I'm
like,
ready.
tell me a time, because this is all about courageous leadership, and you've alluded to your definition of courageous leadership. But if you have one that you want to share with folks, and or you can share it via an example of a time that you chose courage over comfort and the impact that had on your leadership and who you are.
Okay.
I would love to hear it.
That's a lot, but I got it.
I know
I'm
you do.
ready. Um, Here's the thing. I didn't know I was a courageous leader.
Mm,
I was fighting to just have a voice. And
mm,
in that, I emerged a courageous leader. Um, I've always been different. Um, I know several of us say that word different. I've always been different. I was a teenager and I was like, I had these big goals and dreams about writing, and people were like, first of all, you're Black and you're in Detroit. That
mhm.
ain't happening. And I'm like, may not happen for you. Like, so now I got an attitude. I'm like, let me tell you something. What you're not going to do. And again, that was just me fighting for my voice. And I've known my husband since we were 8 years old. And he still remembers being in high school with me and me being like, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And him being like, I've never heard anybody say that. And to see me now because I'm doing it. It has always been a fight to not be put into a box. And that's how I ultimately ended up defining courageous leadership starting with me.
Mm.
Right. I didn't have any points of reference around me to say, okay, mimic that, mirror that. It was like, everybody's like, I'm going to go work at a plant. I was like, I got big hair and I'm not going to be able to do that. It's going to be hot. I'm not with it. Right. Like, that's my simple truth right there. I'm not going to be able to do that.
That's
and,
real.
and so I've been writing since the very first thing that I wrote was an account of the night my mother died. I was 8 years old. That was the very first thing that I wrote. It was in me to tell that story. And it just poured out because at that point I didn't know about filtering, right? That's something that we learn. And so my mother died, I was 8 years old. I mean, like, I could be a Lifetime movie. She was that person that was designed to help me to be a young lady, a woman, and all of those things. And she was gone. So I have been leading myself for a very long time. And yes, I had, other parental figures, but I had to learn myself by myself. That made me very courageous about the things that I hold dear, which is my creativity, my voice. That's important to me. If you tell me I can't say something, that's the moment I've got to say it. Like, it happens. At that point, it's like, oh, you're not going to tell me, because I fought so long to define myself that I buck against those things that want to put me into a box. Like, that's why my business is named what it's named, because people are like, I want to do these things, but I don't have a degree. And I'm like, borrow mine. I got a couple on the wall. You can borrow mine. Like, if that's the thing that you're going to hold yourself hostage with, now what? Now you're free. What are you going to do? And so courageous leadership starts within. This is my definition. When you have the courage to be exactly who you are, no matter where you are. That's courageous leadership to me, because there's no ebbing and flowing. This is pretty much it, and you've known me for a minute. Like, I'm this all the time. Like, I'm not going to argue with you about your vision, but I am hell bent on leading you and helping to provide clarity. And you'll figure it out on your own. I'm not a finger wagger. I'm not a yeller. That's not me. And more often than not, my okay is more powerful than me yelling and screaming. I know that. Right? Look, did I get everything in that question? Did I cover it up?
You did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when does it get hard for you? Right? Like, you're human. I know you're also superhuman, but like, it's got to get hard sometimes. Like, what are the moments that push you the most?
It gets hard for me because I am a collection of blurred lines. I'm in the South. I was raised in the North. I was raised in a predominantly Baptist household. I believe in Jesus. I believe in spirit and universe. I'm a collection of blurred lines. And so it gets hard when I interact with people who they say it's this or this instead of it's these things at the same time. That's hard for me because I've had people say, I worked in a company at one point in time, and I was one of 8 people in a company of 12,000 people that had master's degrees. And I was the only Black. I was the only female. And it was like, people were walking like, are you supposed to be in here? Like, we were meeting, and I'm like, that was challenging for me because I believe you create your own normals. And so having conversations in a room that's predominantly male, in a room that's predominantly white men, it's like, that was a challenge because I don't want to step out of my character and basically be an ass, right? I'm not trying, because then that falls into these stereotypes that we buck against. And I've already said I'm a rebel. That's not going to work for me. So corporate was challenging for me. Right? Because, You're supposed to walk and talk a certain way. You're supposed to love the cubicle farm. I did not. You're supposed to want this upward trajectory. I did not. I once started a job, and like first week, I told the manager, I was like, listen, I won't retire from here, but while I'm here, I'll do a hell of a job. And she's like, what am I going to do with that? But that was my truth. I'm preparing you. You need to learn what I'm teaching you because I'm not going to always be here. Right. And so those social norms, they don't really work for me. I can't, I won't. It's not even I can't. I won't compromise what I've developed within myself. So I'm a Christian woo-woo sorceress, whatever you want to call it, whatever. I'm just me. And I'm happy. And I am developing every single day. So situations as a mom, I'm in the suburbs. As a mom, when I go to the schools, people don't know how to take me. So they're like, you're a stay-at-home mom? No, I run a business. But from home. And it's like, yes. So again, those things that are common social norms that I view as prisons, I just buck against them. It doesn't matter how small it has to be. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to take on a label. I also, just as a personal, I try not to label other people, even if they use particular labels for themselves. We've already had this conversation. If I'm not going to do it. Like, you are Rachel to me. Period. Like, Rachel could be purple with pink hair. It doesn't matter. She's Rachel. I'm a Rachel. Like, that's the thing. And so for me, again, that takes courage because there's so much that goes into that. Like I said, interacting with schools and things like that. I don't want my kids to be ostracized because they got the weird mom. But guess what? Your mom's weird. Like, so, I mean, it's not new to you. Like, these are things. It's not just business and things like that. I'm still a person. And that can sometimes be challenging because people just see you as this resource. Yes. All of that. And women get it especially hard because we tend to just take on all these hats because we're nurturers. So we're mom. I got dogs under my feet. I'm the puppy whisperer. I'm a creative resource. I'm tech support. I am the homemaker. I am the grocery shopper. I am the secret shopper. I am all of that. The chauffeur. Don't forget the chauffeur. And so, and I'm trying to do that and build a business and help people write books that say something. Like, that's my mission. Help people write books that say something. You take that how you want. It's meant to be said like that. Books that say something. So that's my story and I own it. Yeah. I didn't wake up and own it. It's a process. Every day there was a piece of my story that I added to it that allowed me to own each piece. So one day I woke up and I loved my hair. One day I woke up and I was like, you know what? I'm a thick chick and I like it. Those are the pieces of my story that I learned every single day. I'm a night owl. I own it. Those are the things that I had to really embrace. And that fuels my courage.
Right. Yeah. Isn't that something? What a beautiful, beautiful reflection. And like so self-aware around all of the layers of what make you you. And I think the power of acknowledging all the intersections of who we are and all the multidimensional components of our identities, it gives us more permission to uncover and unearth and heal ourselves, because what you just modeled is like, I don't think anybody likes being squeezed into a box, nobody likes being told they have to live a particular way, right?
Right.
And the truth is there's something that is It's pervasive. I call it like we absorb these messages. We're all sponges at one point in life, and so much of our life is unpacking and unearthing and uncovering and like letting go of all the funk that we've absorbed over all these years. And it's not easy. And it's certainly when it comes to sharing, I think the biggest fear is like, what are they going to think? Right? If I share my story, they're going to judge me and the critics are going to come out and this and that. And so what do you say to people who are worried about critics? And what do you say to people who are afraid to push publish on that first blog or push send on that first email or that first video? Like, what do you say to people who are right on that edge?
Here's the thing. What I say is check your motives. Did you do it to please those people, or did you do it to save, help, reach out, empower another set of people? Check your motives. The reality is this: the people that criticize you the most, hate on you, however you want to phrase it, there's nothing you can do to win them over. That's the reality. It sucks, but there's nothing you can do. You could pay them every dime you earn, and they're still going to say, this is all you got. They're never going to get you. They're never going to support you. Don't focus on them. Check your intentions. If you're sharing from a place of hurt, don't do it. Don't push publish. I say it all the time. I don't do tell-alls. I do teach-alls. That's my motto. Tell-alls don't help people heal. Tell-alls means I got to get my side of the story out. You need to heal. You're not in a position to help. Teach-alls focus less on who did it, more on the situation and the lesson learned. More often than not, I get people that say, I want to tell my story of this and there was abuse involved. And I'm like, we can totally do that. The thing is, though, using abuse as the example, you don't have to go back through every single thing that happened, because the person that you're speaking to is in that situation. They don't need to hear it happen to you. What they want to know is how you got out, what your revelation was, what your process was. They want to know that, not what happened per se, right? So they want to know from a whole you how you got to be whole. That's the thing. That's the beauty of a teach-all. And so again, you've got to give yourself permission to heal and then draw out the nuggets, draw out the lessons, because that's what people need, right? I'm again going to use motherhood. Those who've had children, I do not have to tell them what labor is like. They don't want to know that. Now, if I snap back into a size 6 body, which I did not, they want to know how I did that, right? That's the difference. They don't want to know. So, I was dilated. They don't care. They're like, oh yeah, no, I got that part. Been there, done that. I know what that's like. How did you get over this hurdle? How did you get to the point where a week after having the baby, you were back running, which I wasn't, back running and things like that's what they want to know. They want to know how you successfully recovered, how you bounced back, how you did it. That's what they want to know. Not what you felt like when you were in it, because they got that covered. Right? It would be like laying in a ditch next to someone and explaining to them what it felt like to lay in a ditch. They're going to be like, right here with you. Got that part covered. How do we get out? Right? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think this is the big emphasis on why it's essential that we all heal. We have to heal. And I think the power of your coaching is it's cathartic. It's you offer space, you hold space for people to be clear about where they have healed and where they haven't healed. And then you say, okay, now you've got your homework for the week. Like, here's something to think about, right? I think even while we were working together, I came up with the idea around lead from your scars, not your wounds, and I did that talk on that because it was it was so clear to me where I hadn't healed. And I thought, gosh, if somebody else, we can do some major harm if we actually put a message out there. It was connected to the Me Too movement, because I was seeing a lot of people really harm and rupture relationships. And that's really problematic. And I think I know you are such an expert at, you have a vision, you see, you feel, because you've been doing this work for so long, what's actually required for people to work through that.
And it's about layers.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, when people come to me, they say a couple of things. One thing they usually say is, I've got my title. And I'm like, that's great. That's probably not going to be, it's probably not going to be what we use. The other thing is, I know what my book is going to be about. And it's like, do you? Okay. I do that because if you know what it's going to be about, why isn't it done? If you've got the title, why isn't it done? There's an alignment issue there, right? Because if you know this is the title, this is the topic, what's the holdup? Why am I not seeing this on Amazon? Why am I not seeing this in Barnes and Noble? Why?
Right.
Because it sounds good. It's surface level. It strokes the ego, but it doesn't meet the need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sad truth. And most people don't want to hear that, you know. I'm not just a writing coach. I've been doing this for a long time. Like I said, one of the first things that I remember writing was about a traumatic experience, you know? And so I can spot the BS a mile away, the stuff, the fluff, as they call it, you know, I can spot it a mile away. And I'm like, okay. And you know, this question, okay, how did you feel when you wrote that? And it's like, I felt good. Did you? You know, I am a voice expert. I'm a voice editor. Most people don't know that. I know your voice. That's why I talk to my clients. Yeah, writing, we could do this over email. I got to be able to talk to you. I got to be able to hear you. And I've sent books back. I'm like, I've never heard you use the word thus. What is this? Send it back. Take it away. I don't know what this is. Like, you're going to be real in your book when you work with me. You're going to be real. You're going to be helpful. You're going to be the solution that someone's looking for.
Right.
That's I'm all for that. Now, if you want to say, you know, I've got 16 steps, I'm going to give you these 8, and then you got to sign up for I'm not your girl. I'm not your girl for that. But if you want people to be talking to you like you're in the room and they're talking to your book, that's me. Because I want you to connect with your audience. I want you to be that thing that they've been looking for. And that's why we toss out titles, because I know keywords. I got all of that. I got that covered. What's your audience looking for? That when they find your book and they read the title, they're going to say, this is exactly what I was looking for, right? That's a big deal. That's a big deal. People are looking for help. And unless you make it clear that you have enclosed that and packaged that into a book, they're not going to pick that book up. Right? Just because it sounds good to you, it doesn't mean that's what they're looking for.
Right.
I'm about movements.
That's
what I'm about.
That's right. And it's for humanity, you know, it's for making the world better. And that requires a different, when we talk about multi-medium, you know, a lot of us are teachers, parents, community organizers, facilitators, social workers, entrepreneurs, coaches in here. And it can be really confronting to be super good at your day job, to be really good at the actual bulk of your work, whether it's coaching, teaching, facilitating, helping, right? And then to not see those skills transfer to a piece of paper, you're like, wait a second, that, like, what happened? And what happens is what I've called like post-traumatic Microsoft Word disorder. Like, it's like, I can't type in there. I need to say it out loud, or I need to, like, there's some disconnect that happens. And I'm convinced that it comes back to our education system, where we've all internalized some trauma with, like, being told we had to follow all these rules that, like, served us a particular point, but did not, for me, I did not have a creative process of experiencing English in school. Like I didn't have one English teacher who like tapped into the writer in me. I had one ninth grade English teacher who allowed me to write a poem that like inspired me for the very first time. But that like, right, that wasn't on Microsoft Word. And so when we think about these associations we have, and even blogging, even Facebook, like when you start transitioning to different mediums, I think it's important to hold space for that transition and really make sure that you're surrounded by support. And you do that so well, Tessa. You support people through that transition, which I think it's a distinction, right? Like to translate and code switch what you're good at into a different medium. That's why people need coaches, you know?
Right. And I'm going to tell you guys a simple trick to know if you are experiencing writer's block or you're having a hard time. Look at your posture. When we're taught to type, we are taught ASDF, JKL semicolon, elbows down. You're taught to be rigid, right? Imagine the message that's going through your body to your mind and back and forth. It's like, oh, this is hard. I'm already outside the rules. Oh, my finger was on the W, so like you shut down. The other thing is going back to spelling and grammar, right? Spelling and grammar. I'm going to tell you a secret. Tessa's not the best speller, but Tessa has an awesome editor on her team. That's the thing. It's about getting the imperfect story out. I tell my clients all the time, Rachel, you've heard this. You're the talent. I got people for that. I got people for this. I don't need you to do that. I need you to bring the message. Just show up, bring the message. That's it. And so when you think about the typing posture and go back to spelling and grammar and, depending on what your school system was like, I had one teacher that changed my writing life. I was 8 years old. I had just moved from South to North and I was bored. I was bored. Like school, I got that. That's easy. I was that kid. And she gave me a notebook and a pen and she told me to write my vision. And I would write in that journal all the time. I would write things I imagined. I would write little stories. I wrote in it all the time. But she gave me permission to do it. So it goes back to permission. Her legacy, her name is Paula Bailey. I'll never forget her. Her legacy continues in me. She did not get caught up in, she's like, okay, you did the assignment like 20 minutes into the class. I'm not going to have you try to sit here and sit still. You're 8. You hopped up on sugar. That's not going to work. She's like something else. She was that person. And she had been teaching long enough to know that the system doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes you got to bend the rules a little bit, right? To get this child to, for like boys, don't even get me started on that. I know we've had conversations, but like boys, trying to get them to sit still for long periods of time, send them to gym first, then bring them to the classroom. She was that person that understood that. She was that person that would say, all right, guys, come on, we're going to take a walk through the hallways. She was that person because she had an understanding of kids, people, period. And it wasn't just, all right, wrote this on the board and check. It wasn't like that. And look where I am today. What if she hadn't done that? I might be a lawyer. I might be miserable. I might be like, daydreaming about writing, and instead of trying a case or whatever. But she honed in on the thing that I liked the most. I cannot imagine what it looked like from her perspective. Like, did I light up when it was time to write? I don't know. But she honed in on that and said, here, you do this so you won't distract the other kids. Here, you do this. You know what I mean? And it was about permission. She gave me permission to be creative. And she told me, it wasn't like only write this. That's exactly, I'll never forget that. She said, write whatever you want. What do you see? What do you imagine? What lands do you see? I wish I still had those stories, but just think about that. And it started with permission, which is what I open with. It started with permission.
Full circle. That is such a beautiful, powerful story, and what a great way to end, because it's full circle for one. And for two, you know how much I care about education, and how much I believe one teacher has the capacity to change the entire life trajectory for one young person. And that's the case in point. You know, it just takes one teacher to believe and to say, what if there was no box? Here's a journal. Like, what if we create our own world? The power of that, you know, at 8 years old, what a gift that she gave you.
Right.
And imagine how many teachers do that every day. I know a lot of brilliant teachers who create worlds for their young people and differentiate learning styles and all of that. There's so much brilliance out there, but then there are so many missed opportunities every day.
Right.
And so what a gift. And I'm just so glad that she gave you that journal, because you get to be here with us now in this capacity.
I know.
So thank
I
you.
know.
Thank you for sharing that.
Not a problem. I mean, it's a part of my story. It's a part of why I'm so passionate about your voice and using your voice. It's a big deal.
It's a really big deal. It's a big deal. And there's so many different ways that people, you know, could translate what it means to share their voice. And so I guess if you had to offer any final words or any question that I didn't ask you that you want to make sure to share something about, what might you end with? What do you want people to walk away thinking about?
This is what I want people to know. I stand behind this and I fight for this, is that your voice is important. It doesn't matter if you feel like that story's been told or that process has been explained. You have people you're assigned to help, to uplift, to empower, and they are waiting on your voice. They're not waiting on, Gary V's voice. They're not waiting on my voice. They're waiting on your voice. And it's because of the passion and the power that you have. Not that it's better or worse than anyone else's. It's just different. It's for a particular people. So give yourself permission to use your voice, whether that's speaking, whether that's in a blog, whether that's in a book. Don't rank and rate those things as if one is better than the other. You never know who's Googling late at night because they're looking for an answer and come across your blog. You have no idea.
Right.
You have no idea. Give yourself permission to use your voice and value your voice. Value it. Don't downplay your story. Don't downplay your successes. Don't downplay your knowledge, because somebody needs you to show them a better way.
That's right. And don't wait for tomorrow. Get started today. Like, give yourself permission today and go write the thing. Go put it out there, to get started today. Because it is, we never know what tomorrow will bring. And today is the day to push send and push publish and push whatever the case may be. We had this moment yesterday where I was like, I'm pushing send. And it's just like, it's liberating. It's scary. And that right there is courage. It takes courage every single day to show up and to use your authentic voice and to stay in alignment with your core values and to say no to things that are out of alignment.
Right.
And to step into your power. And what a gift, Tesa, and what a powerful model you are of all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have been here, and I just love you guys so much.
Oh, likewise. So if people want to stay connected, or if they're like, ooh, I wonder what it's like to work with Tesa, or like, what does she got going on? How could they find you?
They can always find me at Borrow My MBA. It's real simple. Borrow My MBA. I'm on Instagram, Be My MBA. Facebook, Be My MBA. I'm out there. So easy to find me.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we will be talking as we do every week. But for now, goodbye in this virtual gathering space. And everybody who's watching the replay, let us know what this sparks for you. We had a couple comments at the end. Ooh, that's juicy. It takes courage. Yes, it takes courage to keep showing up as you, sharing your authentic story. And remember to give yourself permission to lead with your unique spark, y'all, because the world needs all of us. Yeah. So thank you. And I look forward to staying connected. Have a wonderful rest of the day, good people.